Soak it in, y'all. Soak it in. This could be the last game of this big three. Not to sound morbid, but that's the reality of the situation. Now, do I think that it is? Stay tuned to find out. Now, y'all like that intro? Was that a good hook? Here we sit. 10th seed, bottom end of the play-in game. You know, when you look at the standings, it's like 3 or 4. I mean, the separation is wild, as far as how good these teams all are. But I thought I would give you my thoughts on this one-off, this matchup. And to be perfectly honest with you, I'm not sure I like our chances in a full playoff series against anyone right now. When you just consider the age, the wear and tear, guys chipped up, but that's not what this is, right? It's essentially a Game 7, a one-off in Sacramento against a very familiar foe who, frankly, has been little bro to us for a while. Now, maybe that works against the Warriors, and this is their revenge and this is their time, or perhaps Big Bro will always be Big Bro. I think, first and foremost, my thought is attack through the pick and roll. I think Mike Brown, this Kings team, the familiarity of these two teams, they're too familiar defending the split action and the off-ball motion offense. They're going to be dialed in, locked in, and I think that if you play too much that way, you're going to see a lot of turnovers because they know the reads as well as we do, right? And when you put them in a pick and roll action, it's the simplest offense in basketball, but there's a reason why it's the most popular offense in basketball, and particularly with Trace. As a vertical spacer and attacking, they don't have any rim protection outside of JaVale. If he gets on the floor, I think that Trace can have a really big impact on both ends of the floor as a vertical spacer. Also, how about the inverted pick and roll with Kuminga and Steph? I think Wiggins can run the same thing. So I say less is more, keep it simple, and attack through the pick and roll. Listen, when it comes to getting tickets to your next big event, it shouldn't be a hassle. But for some reason, a lot of the time it is, depending on the app you're using to get your tickets. Now, I've had an experience where I've gotten tickets and they were listed wrong. They were in a completely different state, but no refund policy. I ended up having to try to relist them. And that's one of the many reasons I stick with the GameTime app, because your purchase is covered by the most flexible customer service in the ticketing industry. My cousin and I, we were in Las Vegas for Summer League, and we were having a good time. We also wanted to go to the UFC that was taking place that weekend, but we couldn't find tickets that we thought were of good value. And again, GameTime comes through with the last-minute ticket deals. We end up having probably the best experience I've had at a MMA event ever. Floor seating. I don't even want to tell you the deal we got, but we felt good about it, right? And GameTime, I mean, it's easy. You get flash deals, and then again, you get backed up with customer service where if there is a mistake or something needs to change, you're actually going to feel taken care of. Now, my next plan is for this Mercury Fever game, Sunday, June 30th, out here in Phoenix. And can you take a guess why? We want to go see Caitlin Clark. And I'm assuming she's going to be the number 1 pick, pretty safe, right? So I think we're going to go ahead and try to get these rare, fine diamond. They point it out for you. You don't have to go searching. So take the guesswork out of buying tickets with GameTime. Download the GameTime app, create an account, and use the code Alchemy for $20 off your first purchase. Terms do apply, but again, create the account and use the code ALCHEMY for $20 off. Download the GameTime app for last-minute tickets, lowest prices guaranteed. My next point would be, Draymond, you have to show some sort of respect to Harry B. You got to do it. You got to do it. Now, I'm not saying there can't be possessions where he turns his back and he dares him to shoot it, right? Or he stunts and just lets him shoot it. But you can't just from the start of the game say, oh, I'm giving you that 3 and let him get comfortable. I think that you're tempting fate, right? He was a half an inch away from ending us in the first round last year with that 3. And so we know the psychological warfare that Draymond likes to play, and we know the history between him and Harry B. I keep feeling weird saying that, but that's the nickname. It is what it is. And I just don't want his ego to get in the way of objectively defending a guy who can make 5, 6, 7 threes. So I get the stunting at times, but make him think about it. Don't have him so sure that you're not going to contest that he gets too comfortable, right? Now, Davion Mitchell is off night. I really liked him coming out, and he's finally getting a role here with Sacramento as they've lost, obviously, Herder and Monk. That's a big deal, right? Obviously, for their offense. I didn't bring it up because I think everyone knows that they're out at this point. So that means more Davion Mitchell, and it means more Keon Ellis, who I'm not that familiar with. Two defenders, two defensive-minded players. Davion I'm familiar with. Here's what I'll say. I have the tape. Patrons, you know this to be true. In all 4 of these games, the Warriors went under the screen on Davion, and he made them pay over and over again. He had 3, 4, he might even hit 5 in a game. But, at a certain point, you have to adjust to the scouting report. If it says go under and he's hit 3 of them, maybe you go over. And so, again, I'm not saying you got to do it every time, but I think they have to remain dynamic on how they're going to cover Davion Mitchell because – for whatever reason, I'm not too big into analytics. He shoots well against the Warriors, probably because of what I just said about Draymond is Mike Brown and them know, they're going to give it to you. Just be comfortable in rhythm, shoot it. And so don't let him get comfortable. He is capable of making threes. And I think as far as his defensive prowess, hounding Steph, it's going to be a factor. I think, again, the off-ball stuff, he's going to do a really good job staying attached, but his calling card is on-ball defense as well and probably going to pick up in the backcourt. You got to run double staggers. You got to set and run big screens. That probably means some Looney minutes as well, right? And then you hope you don't get those moving screen calls. I know that's always a subjective thing, but he and young Keon Ellis are the type that are going to sell out over the top of screens. So you've got to be, if you're the ball handler, if you're Steph, you're CP, you've got to be patient and let these guys come set the screen. And so they don't get hit with those offensive fouls. But I would like to see, our vets bait those 2 young guys in particular into foul trouble. And Clay, something he's been doing the last month or 2 in the season is he'll pump fake someone off the 3-point line, and then he gets downhill and gets to 2 feet and hits them with another kind of like a DeMar DeRozan type pump fake. I think that they're primed to get hit with some fouls like that because they're going to be on 100 defensively in a big situation like that. And so I think I would try to bait those 2 over-aggressive, good young defenders into some fouls with playing off 2 feet, pump fakes, and again, respect them. I don't care what you have to remain dynamic. If you go into the game saying you're going to give Davion Mitchell the 3 ball and go under and he hits 3 in the first half, adjust, right? Don't just die on your sword of what the scouting report said before the game. Now, the other news that's come out in the last 48 hours or so, no GP2. Surprise, surprise. I feel it's like the same way I feel about J. Cole, right? Like as much as you love him, you got to pack them up. It's over with. It's over with. What's the best ability? Say it with me. Availability. And so, obviously, he would have been a huge part of guarding De'Aaron Fox, right? I think the question is, with no Herder, with no Monk, how much do you sell out on De'Aaron Fox? And the answer is always to remain dynamic. Show, an elite offensive player different looks, different defenders, right? But you can't show him the same thing over and over again because he's eventually going to adjust. Now, what I would say about De'Aaron Fox is he's one of these guys where it's very obvious when he's trying to take over. Usually at the end of quarters, but sometimes it can be the start. It depends on the momentum of the game. But he's one of these guys where you're like, he's about to try to go off. And it's in those moments where I think you sell out and you send 2 to him and say, all right, you don't have Herder, you don't have Monk, Harry B, Keegan Murray, what's good? Right? But you got to pick your spots with that. It's not if you're going to do it, it's when you're going to do it, right? But the other thing that I would say is trust Trace late. Trust Trace late. Now, he's obviously been starting and he's had a big impact, but you notice a lot of the time in closer games, he's nowhere to be found down the stretch. And usually what that means is it's Chris Paul in there. And I don't think that Chris Paul has to close this game if it's a tight game. I think we're all expecting one. I understand why you want his floor generalship out there, but it's always a give and take. and he hasn't had the greatest ball security of late. And I just think that that Trace's vertical spacing, along with his rim protection and presence in the paint, is just as valuable down the stretch as Chris Paul, maybe just having that experience. And it's going to be a tough sell because Kerr. I think we all know where I'm going with that and who he's going to tend to rely on. But like I said, I think that Trace can have a huge impact on this game on both sides of the floor. I think we're going to see some Looney who has been playing better. I think that's advantageous. I think our real advantage lies in the wings. When you look at it, I'm not saying they're always going to be matched up against each other on the floor, but when you look at Wiggins and Kuminga versus Keegan Murray and Harrison Barnes. Now, those two are probably more disciplined, right? They may not get out of pocket. They're maybe a little more consistent, but I think, the ceiling on how these four could play, if Wiggins and Kuminga can play how we know they can, if they're focused and aggressive, I think that is where our real advantage lies when you look at the box score at the end of this thing. I think we all can agree that this is kind of a pick'em at this point with these two teams, but it's no fun to just ride the fence, right? You want a pick, so I'll give you a pick. I like the Dubs. I like the Dubs in this one. Big bro. And again, I like the advantage with the wings. I expect that we're going to have everybody dialed in and focused. And without Monk and Herter, I'm not sure that Fox can provide enough offense or carry them to a win. Now, the whistles will have an effect. And then you point to the others. Does Davion Mitchell hit 5 threes, right? Does Draymond, there's all these variables, and that's why it is a pick'em. But my gut right now tells me we get through this one and advance on to, when is it, Friday night for the second game of this play-in, which will open up a whole other can of worms. But at this point, it's one game at a time, right? And again, as I joked at the beginning, I wasn't joking. Like, take this in and enjoy it regardless of the results, because it's been a hell of a ride. Hopefully, it's a ride that isn't over. Hit that like, share, and subscribe. I'm out, y'all.